welcome back to the DSR channel. This is week 7, and I'm going to do a quick series on skirmishers, skirmisher builds, specifically as part of the skirmisher role video series, right? I want to do a number of builds so that I can show them to you one at a time without having to rush through them, do the DPR calculations, and then when I continue the skirmisher role video, I can show how they all compare to each other and how they compare to like frontliners and tanks. Okay, and I'm especially excited about the Whisper Bard because I didn't realize there was a big upgrade in synergy with the 2024 rules, even though they haven't reprinted the Whisper Bard, and that's because of some changes to the base class. So I'm excited to go over those, and I'm going to do this as 2 parts because I actually want to take this build to 20, but levels 1 through 9 can have one combat loop strategy, and levels 10 to 20 have a totally different combat loop strategy. And I wanted to separate those. So this is going to be 2-parter. First off, thanks Boris7494 for calling out that the audio is quite a bit lower than the intros and outros. And frankly, I got a new mic and had a noob moment. I forgot to check it's got a little intake knob here underneath, and the mic gain was like at 50%. So I turned that all the way up. I think it, and I tested it. I think it's going to match better, but let me know if that's still not good enough. I'll make some more adjustments. And wow, okay, so at the beginning of week 7, which is only 2 days ago, y'all, I was at 184 subscribers. I asked if we could get to 200 by the end of this week, and yeah, 2 days later, 246. Wow, thank you so much. But hey, you know what? Let's try for another goal. If we could get to 300, that'd be awesome, and it would mean so much. Thank you all. First up, okay, skirmishers. Remind about what the skirmishers are. These are the one of the melee one of the melee roles, and you're a melee marshal, and you are the high damage, low defense end of that spectrum. Okay. And I think art and coming up with a personality for your character are so important, right? So usually the way I do a build is I might start with a role, like either because I've talked to the party, or usually because I've talked to the party, the rest of the group, and found out, you know, what is everybody else going to play, and what should I play to complement the rest of the group the best. So I get a role, and then I start thinking about what class haven't I played in a while, and then I pick a class for it, and then I kind of pause right then and I go look and just Google art for these characters and look for something that inspires me. So that's what I did for this, for a bard, and I came up with these two options: one male, one female. I like playing both, so and I know a lot of people do. So I'm gonna have 2 options for you. So this is Morana Nocturne. Sorry, Nocturne. Morana Nocturne. Morana is Slavic for the goddess of death, which I think is cool. Very thematic here because we are going to be like magical assassins. So it's going to be pretty cool. And Nocturne, right, is a type of music that is inspired by the night. So very cool here. And I imagine her getting herself invited to parties, getting herself invited to balls as an assassin, right? She's invited to perform. Maybe the person she's, you know, the noble who's invited her doesn't know she's going to assassinate somebody, or maybe they do know and they're the ones paying her to assassinate somebody. She gets herself invited as a performer. She performs, she's maybe dancing, she's got a violin she's playing, and maybe she's got her weapon inside that violin bow, or inside the violin itself. It pulls out, you know, and maybe there's a thin blade in there. Very cool. I like this idea. This is the male version, and this is Soren the Craven, okay? And Soren is Slavic for strict or severe. I think stern, strict and stern, I think is what it stands for, which I think is just fits well. The sound of the name Soren fits really well. I like the picture, you know, he's very strict, very stern. And then the Craven, I like that it's kind of got multiple meanings, right? It could be coward, and I wanted to lean into that with this character where, yes, he's a performer and he's going to get himself invited to parties too. He performs just like Morana. And if people, you know, he likes for people to think that he's a coward because he doesn't want people to know that he's an assassin, a highly skilled one, right? So maybe they think he's an assassin. But also Craven can mean desirable. So maybe he's a bit of a ladies' man. And it can also mean somebody who craves things, right? Maybe he's super dark, right? Maybe he craves bloodshed. Maybe he craves slaying bad guys, you know, and he has no qualms about assassinating. As long as they're bad guys, he has no qualms about assassinating them, right? Forget the law, forget, you know, police officers assassinate bad guys, right? So triple meaning on his name there, which I think is cool. And these are going to be fun characters, right? I actually want to play both of them now. I think my next time I make a character is going to be one of these two. All right, let's get into the build choices, okay? So I'm not going to go through every single feature you're going to get. I'm not going to go through all that stuff, all right? This is the build. These are the choices you need to make this build up through level 4. And I'm going to kind of stop this video at level 4 because at that point, I'll explain later. We're just going to go through level 4. So if you're already familiar with kind of the basics of the bards and the spells you're going to use and all that kind of stuff like that, these are just the choices you're going to make, and boom, you got your character. Okay. Level 1, you're choosing bard. You're going to get 3 skills. I chose deception, performance, and persuasion. Maybe just check with your DM because you're going to be infiltrating by way of like acting and imitating or making performances. So check with your DM on what kind of ability checks they call for relating to imitating and acting. I think that that's very much a performance thing, but check with your DM, make sure they don't have a different idea. And of course, deception, you're going to be lying your guts out all the time here as this kind of character. So that makes sense. And then persuasion, you're going to also want to be good at just talking people into things. Species, I chose high elf. Doesn't matter, okay? Doesn't matter for the build. So choose whatever you like. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of synergy in the sense that this one, we're going to enjoy that bonus spells we get from this, right? Especially Misty Step. That'll be nice. We're also going to enjoy the Fey Ancestry, which is going to give us advantage on saving throws versus Charmed. Those are like nice to haves. None of those are critical for the build. So choose any species you want, and every species has benefits, pros and cons. So you're just gonna get something else, all right? And that's my goal with these kind of things too. Is I don't want to lock you into a single very specific build. I want you to be able to have as much freedom to choose and customize this character to have the identity that you want them to have. Okay. I chose the Wayfarer background. Anything that is going to give any background is going to give you charisma and dexterity is going to work for you. Okay, so you have a few options. We're going to give we take a +2 in charisma, +1 in dexterity, and then our starting ability scores is going to be 8 strength, 16 dexterity, 14 constitution, 8 intelligence, 10 wisdom, 17 charisma. And frankly, you could move the wisdom to intelligence if you want. It doesn't matter. The critical spells that we want to get at level 1 are True Strike, the cantrip, and Disguise Self. We're going to leverage Disguise Self for our assassination and infiltration. It's a great spell for that. True Strike doesn't really matter very much until we hit level 4 when we get to, our charisma to 18, and then True Strike will actually allow us, using True Strike to attack with our charisma instead of dexterity is actually going to allow us to do more damage. And then at levels 5 and up, it actually starts adding additional dice of damage as the cantrip scales up. So that's going to be important later. Level 2, we get 2 expertise, and I've chose deception and performance. Again, that's for the lying, sneaking into places, infiltrating places, not sneaking by stealth, but sneaking in by tricking people, convincing people, being a performer, and being good at performance, right? If you're trying to be a performer and they're like, okay, perform, and you're bad at it, it's not great. So we're going to have expertise in performance. And I'll remind you that, and if your DM doesn't do this, then I'll remind your DM, the rules as written now, actually since Xanathar's Guide to Everything, but they reiterated it in the 2024 Player's Handbook, is that if you make an ability check and you are proficient in the skill and the relevant tool, you roll with advantage, right? You not only roll with proficiency, or in this case expertise, you also get advantage. So if we make a performance check with a musical instrument that we're proficient in, we roll with advantage. Yeah, permanent advantage on that. Okay, level 3, of course, we're choosing the Whispers, College of Whispers as our subclass. That subclass is all about being like a spy. You're kind of like James Bond kind of thing, or any kind of spy character that you love. That's you. You're a spy, but you're also good at assassinating people. Okay, I love this one. The spells you want to take that I recommend, and I don't think any of these are critical for the build, but I recommend them. I think it's going to work well with this build we have going on. Is Enhance Ability. That one's super flexible. That's going to help us in our in combat. Well, mostly out of combat. You can use it in combat. The most valuable thing it does for you in combat is, if you have it on set to dexterity, then you roll initiative with advantage. I don't know if that's worth a spell slot. So we'll mostly use it out of combat. And if we're in a scenario where we're infiltrating by lying and performing, then set it to charisma. And now we have permanent advantage on all of our charisma checks for the whole hour. And you can cast it before you walk in. So you don't have to worry about people seeing you casting it or knowing that you're doing it, and it affects you, not anyone else. So unlike Charm Person, which they get a saving throw against and they'll know you did it, Enhance Ability, nobody knows you did it because you cast it on yourself. And you just walk in there, have permanent advantage on all of your charisma checks for an hour. Sweet. Or if you need to sneak into a place through stealth, then set it to dexterity. Now you have advantage on all of your stealth checks for an hour. Kinetic Jaunt, that'll come into the, I'll explain that when we get into combat a little bit later. And Silence, I think, is thematic, right? If you're going to, show up at a ball, perform during intermission, I think would be an ideal time to slip away, disguise self, right? Make yourself look like somebody completely different. And you actually kind of, after you've got the disguise self going, you want to be, well, after you assassinate the person, you want to be spotted, right? Because you want it known that it was somebody else and not you, not the performer. Because if the performer is seen assassinating people, or nobody's seen assassinating the person that dies, then you're going to start getting this reputation that every time you perform, somebody dies there, right? And then, a lot of people can put two and two together, and that's you, right? So what you actually want to do is slip away during intermission, disguise self, find your target. You might want to cast Silence, right? So that they can't alert anybody. You assassinate them. And if you need to do that, right, you can still do Psychic Blades while being in a silence yourself, right? So you're actually going to be still quite good at assassination. You assassinate them, and then you sneak away, but make sure you're caught. Make sure that you're seen by guards as you slip away. And as you slip away, you don't actually have to fully escape. You just got to get out of line of sight. Be seen by a few guards. And I would change yourself to a different gender, different race, things like that with your disguise self. Be seen by a few guards, so they're like, no, it's this tall. You're playing the character Morana Nocturne, and so change yourself to I don't know, tall, red-skinned elf guy. I don't know. She's very, petite and pale skinned. Make sure that person's seen, so the guards are all looking for that guy, and you just break line of sight and end the disguise self. Now, you might have a little trouble ending it because it doesn't automatically end because you don't have concentration. So, I don't know, slip away, wait an hour for it to end, I guess, and then return to your performance. Later, when you get Dispel Magic, maybe you even spend a spell slot to dispel it yourself, just so that you don't have to wait the hour. All right. So Silence might be a cool thing to get if you're going to engage in those kind of assassinations, but it's not critical for the build. Level 4. All right, our first feat finally. We're going to choose Shadow Touched. Yes, Shadow Touched. And we are going to choose Charisma, so we're going to round our Charisma up to 18. And with an 18 Charisma, now True Strike will actually deal more damage and have a better chance to hit because we'll be using our Charisma that has a +4 modifier instead of our Dexterity, which has a +3 modifier. And there's Disguise Self. You can see how it works. It's an illusion spell, lasts 1 hour. And people can try to figure out that it's an illusion, and they have to take the study action. That's going to be used against your spell save DC. So you still want a high spell save DC. So there's multiple reasons why raising our charisma and then using that as our attack stat is beneficial to us, because that 18 charisma is going to increase our spell save DC by 1. So we're still going to be a good bard, right? We're going to be as good a bard as anyone else at this level, and we're also going to be a good skirmisher, which is cool. There's the Enhance Ability spell. So this is, you choose one ability score, you cast it, and for 1 hour, you have advantage on all of those ability checks, which is cool. Very great. And if you need to sneak the whole party into something or get everybody's got to lie their way into a situation, right? And you've got the barbarian who's got a dump stat of charisma. You can cast this on multiple people by just upcasting it. And you're a full caster, and we're going straight class all the way to 20. So you're going to have a full caster progression. You can upcast this and put it on the whole party or as many of them as you need to at higher levels, so that you can, get everybody to sneak into a place, get everybody to infiltrate a place, get everybody to lie their way in. It's a great spell. And here's Kinetic Jaunt. This one is important to the build, and the reason is this is what you can rely on in some situations. If running in and making an attack and running away, there's just too many enemies, and you're going to have too much trouble provoking opportunity attacks from all of them. If it was just one, if you can just get to one enemy and you have a chance of provoking one opportunity attack, that's not terrible. But if let's say that you just can't get into position without provoking potentially opportunity attacks from 3 of them, you might want to use Kinetic Jaunt instead, right? So that's a second level spell slot, increases your walking speed by 10. All of your movement does not provoke opportunity attacks for a whole minute, right? It's concentration a whole minute. And also note the components. It's somatic only. So you could cast this while hidden, through stealth, and will not break your hide. It will not break your stealth. So nice. And you can move through the space of other creatures. So it helps you even further if you, I don't know, if you want to like walk right through the enemy's frontliners and get to their caster on the back line, you can do that. And there's a silence spell. It's got a pretty good radius, 40-foot diameter radius. So that's a pretty good sized room. So if you need to assassinate like the king or I don't know, some corrupt politician in their room, most rooms aren't that big. So you could sneak in, cast this, blanket the whole room in silence, and then stand at the door and attack them, right? So they'd have to get through you to try to escape, and they can't alert anybody. Pretty cool. And here's the Shadow Touched feat. So Shadow Touched, right? +1 intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. We're going to choose charisma, of course. And the reason we're choosing Shadow Touch and not something else like Misty Step or Fey Touch for Misty Step is because the first level spell, I mean, it gives us the second level spell of invisibility. That's going to be nice. We'll use that certainly sometimes. The reason we're choosing this, though, is the first level spell that we get to choose, which is Wrathful Smite, right there. And we do want Wrathful Smite because that allows us to weaponize our spell slots and our bonus action. Okay, so like I said, we're a full caster. We're going to have full caster spell progression, and we're not going to do a lot with our spells in combat unless you're just healing somebody or doing some, casting some sort of support spell. But this allows us to weaponize them, and we're going to do that, right? So we can cast it whenever we hit to add more damage. And you're going to see that in the DPR calculations. All right, so our key non-combat features are going to be our skill proficiencies. We have several, and we have Jack of all trades. So we have half proficiency in every skill. We also have 2 expertise, so deception performance. Then we have Words of Terror, which is a subclass feature, and that is very much a social encounter kind of ability. You're going to you have the ability to frighten one person once per short or long rest. You have to talk to them for a minute in order to cause them to be frightened. And if it works, they're frightened of you for an hour. So it's an hour-long frighten. Now, you can't actually use it for combat because if you start combat, then the frighten ends. So this is a social encounter kind of thing where you're going to frighten somebody. Maybe it's you got to talk your way past a guard, and you use this to frighten the guard so that he just leaves the door unguarded of the person you're going to assassinate, right? Or maybe you're just at the party, the ballroom, and you have some sort of like romantic rival or social rival, and you just want to make them look foolish or scare them off. And you're going to use this to do that. I think this would be a lot of fun for any of the groups who lean into social encounters and like to role play. This can be a lot of fun. But the nice thing about this build is even if there are no social encounters, and this is still going to be a solid build. You're going to be a good combatant. Key combat abilities. All right. So first up, Psychic Blades. This is the main thing we're building around for this assassination character. You get this as your subclass 3rd level feature, or one of the 2 subclass 3rd level subclass features. So this allows you that when you hit with a weapon, you can expend a Bardic Inspiration and deal extra damage. So at 3rd level, it starts off at 2d6 psychic damage, and it upgrades to 3d6 at 5th level, 5d6 at 10th level, and 8d6 at 15th level. Okay, so that's some solid damage, right? That's almost as much as like sneak attack, right? Like rogues at max level get a 10d6 sneak attack, so it's almost as much as a sneak attack, and you just trigger it whenever you hit. Only once per round though, and only on your turn. Okay, so you can't use it during reactions attacks like rogues can, but it doesn't take any additional action. It doesn't take your bonus action or anything like that. Now, here's the thing that was the big upgrade from the 2024 version of the Bard, where you see that for their Font of Inspiration level 5 ability, you see that they added that second sentence which says, in addition, you can expend a spell slot, no action required, to regain 1 expended use of Bardic Inspiration. Now, in general, I don't think a Bardic Inspiration is worth as much as a spell slot. I mean, maybe if you're desperate, maybe you have a bunch of spell slots and you just want to expend some 1st level spell slots to give Bardic Inspiration to your allies, sure. But for Psychic Blades, That's 8d6 damage at high levels, right? For the cost of 1 spell slot and no actions. So very worth it. Now, I'm going to stop this build at level 4 to keep it in line with kind of a lot of the other builds I'm doing. But watch for this in part 2, where I'm going to get into this. I just wanted to show it because I was pretty excited about this. So I still wanted to show it in part 1. So your basic combat loop. When I put these on there, this is not, you're not allowed to do anything else. This is just if you don't have a specific different thing that you know is more important for you to do right now with your turn, then just do this, okay? Yeah, this is your default. So on your turn, if you feel like you need kinetic jaunt because there's too many enemies or you're just too low on hit points or whatever, then cast kinetic jaunt, spend your second level spell slot, and that lets you run in and run out without provoking opportunity attacks and slip past enemies. Otherwise, save your bonus action and then make your attack. Use True Strike, cast a True Strike cantrip as your action to make an attack with your dueling blade. If you hit, trigger Psychic Blades, and if you haven't already used your bonus action and haven't cast a spell yet this turn, then Wrathful Smite to add more damage and potentially frighten them, so that way, if you back away and provoke an opportunity attack, they have disadvantage on the attack. Okay? And as a reaction, you don't have any really good reactions unless you take like Silvery Barbs, which I didn't put on the build. A lot of DMs, ban Silvery Barbs, which I don't agree with. I DM 99% of the time I play D&D, and I allow Silvery Barbs. I think it's great, actually. I mean, it is super powerful. Yes, they block. They use it to prevent most of my monsters' crits. Once in a while, they prevent a monster from saving against a spell or effect. And it is very powerful. I don't disagree with that at all. But this is a game. The point is to have fun. You know what's fun for the players is they're trying to be heroes, right? That's what they're role playing as a hero. Why not let them feel powerful, right? That's going to be a lot of fun for them. 2, it helps keep the players engaged when it's not their turn because they're paying attention for opportunities to use Silvery Barbs, right? So they're engaged. 3, teamwork, right? This is teamwork. Oh, I want to make sure that control spell of the wizard really lands. I'm going to use Silvery Barbs to make sure it lands, right? They're helping each other, which makes them work together, makes them like playing with each other more. They're engaged with each other more. These are all good things for the fun of the game, right? Which is what we're here for. Okay. This is not competitive. I don't know. This is not a sport. This is a game. You're here playing with other people and having fun. Let them just feel powerful. And yes, this allows them to, overcome all kinds of encounters easier. Guess what? You're the DM. Just use harder monsters, right? Just move them up all 1 CR or something like that. Or you don't even need to do that, okay? You don't. If they are using Silvery Barbs, they're expending resources to do that. So if they're expending resources and all of your like small encounters building up to the BBEG, great. That's what those encounters are for. Who cares if they felt awesome as they stomped them? They still spent a spell slot, and they probably had to do a bunch of these, right? They've spent multiple spell slots. Maybe they got through without taking any damage, but they still spent spell slots, right? It's doing its job. I say allow it, right? If your DM doesn't allow it, show them this bit of the clip. Tell them to call me if you need to. I'll convince them, or I'll try. But I say allow it. I don't actually ban anything that's published by WotC. So all the WotC stuff, expanded rules, core rules, I allow all of it. I personally just ban a few of the rules interactions that I think are exploits, like the infinite simulacrum and using divine intervention to cast Hallow. Like I block those things, but otherwise, pretty much allow everything. And finally, DPR, the damage per round calculations. We're going to show the math. Please double check it. Let me know if I got any parts wrong or if you have questions about it, and I can try to explain it. But this is why I like to do these things with community, right? Because it doesn't matter how smart any one person is. You get a dozen or a couple of dozen people brains together, and they're always going to do better, right? So yeah, community is awesome. All right, so this is our build. You can see the second column is the combat loop. That's what we're doing during combat. Then the next column over, I start breaking down the calculations for damage, okay? So first up, and these are all what happened within 1 round, okay? So we got our Yukawa, which we're reflavoring as some kind of dueling blade. We're going to use True Strike to get the benefit of using our Charisma instead of our Dexterity, which is higher. And on 2 of those attacks, we're going to use Lucky. And you can see that I broke it down on the attacks column, and that's why it says 0.22. It's because on 2 of the 9 attacks you get out of 9 rounds of combat from 3 combats, 3 rounds each is the average, right? It's not always like that, but that's kind of the average, how it all averages out for a long rest. So 2 of those will have advantage, 7 will not. So you can see the next line down is the same thing. It just doesn't have the advantage calculation or the advantage added to it. And that's it's 7 out of the 9 attacks, which is why it's 0.78 rounded up. Chance to hit is 80% when we have advantage, because advantage cuts your chance to fail in half. And our chance to hit without it is 60. So you cut the chance to miss in half, and that gives us an 80% chance to hit with advantage. On those 2 attacks, factoring in crits, the total DPR spread out over the day of how it factors into our DPR over the entire day is 1.74 for the advantage attacks. For the non-advantage attacks, that's 4.19. That's because we're making 7 of the non-advantage attacks and only 2 of the advantage attacks. Then we're going to trigger Psychic Blades 4 times. We only get 4 of those per long rest at this level, and we can't regenerate them with a short rest or with spell slots, so it's just 4. And you can see that comes out to 3.46 DPR contribution from those. Now, I have the chance to hit of that at 100 because you cannot trigger Psychic Blades until you've already hit. So, and we're definitely going to hit at least 4 times out of those 9 attacks. So you'll just use all of those, and those will all contribute to your DPR. And for these next 2 lines, I'm calculating it as if you spent every spell slot and your free casting of Wrathful Smite on Wrathful Smite. We're not casting anything else with our spell slots. So this will go down a little bit. It's not a big deal, but just for the sake of the numbers and this calculation, I use Wrathful Smite for everything. So you can see that we're going to have 5 castings of Wrathful Smite at first level, because we have 4 spell slots and we have 1 free casting. And then at second level, we're going to have 3, because we have 3 second level spell slots at level 4. You can see how much damage that's adding. The first level Wrathful Smites come out to 2.12 DPR, and the second level Wrathful Smites come out at 2.68 DPR. You can see that if you add those together, that means we're going to cast a total of 8 Wrathful Smites. That means we have to hit at least 8 out of the 9 attacks we make that day to make this work. And it doesn't, if I were to do the math on how many of these attacks are going to land, it's like 7, more than 7.5. So you're more likely to get 8, but it won't always happen. So you might not get that 8th Wrathful Smite out of this. But like I said, it's not that much damage that you're losing. So we're comfortably at 14.19 or 14.19 DPR, which puts us, solidly inside that range of what I'd recommend to be good enough as a skirmisher. You at least want to get 12 DPR, I think, as a skirmisher. Otherwise, you're not contributing as a skirmisher very much. You can have your frontliners who are also doing like 12 DPR, and they're like, "Why do I have you around if you're doing less damage? I'm taking the hits." Just tell them to piss off, because you're only level 4, right? You haven't, and like I explained, I think in one of the other builds, you haven't had that much time to differentiate yourself, right? You've only made a few levels worth of choices, and as a skirmisher, you're always choosing damage over defense, and frontliners are kind of balancing the two, but you're only level 4, so you haven't made that many choices. As you go further and further up in levels, then you'll start making more of those decisions where you'll start building more damage, and they'll start building more defenses, and you'll see these numbers start to diverge. But at level 4, it's just not that, they're not going to diverge that much. And that's the build. All right, so that's the end of part 1. I'm going to cut it off at level 4 to kind of keep it some parity with the other builds I'm doing for the skirmisher. But I'm just going to do the bonus and take this all the way to level 20 for part 2 here. And I want to remind you that the combat loop that I just described for this applies all the way up to level 9. Like you're going to gain, spell slots. You're going to use higher level Wrathful Smites, but you're still going to do that 1 attack with True Strike, Psychic Blades, and Wrathful Smite. That's the same thing you're going to do all the way to level 9. At level 10, it's going to change. So I'm going to cover that in the second video. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time. And I appreciate all your support.